Hi Kitchen, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making some souped up ramen. The seniors voted, as well as several other people, but even within the seniors, ramen got by far the most votes. So I'm going to show you how to take that little package of ramen noodles and hopefully make something that's just a little bit more wholesome, a little tastier, and a little more of a complete meal than just that little flavor packet is. A couple of notes. Remember, there are 4 grades in the grade book already, so you want to make sure that if you haven't gotten those finished, please, especially if you have a practicum in your mind for your sequence of courses for culinary. Remember that even though these grades may not go in there as far as, they won't hurt you, the 100 that anybody who turns in all of their assignments this 9 weeks will get is going to boost their grade point average inside the course over anybody who just let it go. So please, if you're interested in practicum and want to make sure your name stays at the top of that list, you need to finish these assignments and get that 100 for the 4th 9 weeks. All you got to do is complete the assignments, and you're getting hundreds. Please take the time to do that. Like I said, their 4th one just went in. That's the ingredient survey, and we have 3 more. We have the reflection for this week, and then the ingredient survey and reflection for next week. So stay on top of it, please, so that you can get that 100. Next week we will not be doing a normal cooking video. Instead, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some of my kitchen gadgets. So that ingredient survey will look a little different. It'll just kind of ask you some questions about gadgets and things. But I've got several kitchen gadgets that I'd like you to get a chance to see and to talk about a little bit before we leave for the summer. So that's all I have as far as announcements. I'll meet you back behind me at the bar, and we'll get started here in just a minute. All right, kitchen, we're actually at the stove for the first thing. You can see I've got a pot of water boiling here, and I'm going to take the lid off. You can see it's rapidly boiling. Just a reminder, we've done this before in class with boiled eggs, but I'm going to turn this down to get it to stop boiling for a minute. I want it to go down to a simmer, or at least not quite such a hard boil, because what we're going to do here is we are going to boil these 2 eggs. So remember, we have some salted and oiled water. We have boiling water. That lets us know that temperature is exactly 212, lets us set our timer appropriately. I'm going to put my eggs in here carefully. I'm going to crank the temp back up to make sure it stays at a boil, and I'm going to set my timer for 7 minutes. And while that timer's going, I'm going to go ahead and put the lid back on, because there's no reason to let any temperature drop at all there. For 7 minutes, that's going to boil at a rapid temperature. Sorry, I left the screen there. And then when we take those out, we're going to put them right into an ice bath. That way that they will not in any way continue to cook. Because what we're looking for is a nice, soft to just medium boiled egg. We don't want one with that chalky middle. We want that nice yellow orange yolk. And you'll see that when we get to the end of the dish. All right, let's head over to the island now. All right, kitchen, while the eggs are boiling, I got that timer going. You got here in the background. I'm going to go ahead and prep some other ingredients. Now, right here on my cutting board, I've got some ham. We're going to add that to our soup. Now, this ham is just lunch meat ham, like from the deli. And then I also have a piece of fresh ginger. I'm going to take this piece of fresh ginger, and I'm going to just peel the outside of it. We don't want the skin of this ginger in our food. It doesn't have the same flavor, and it has a different texture. It's just not what you want to be eating. But we don't need that much of it. So I'm just kind of peeling it back. And then I've got a grater here. And then with that grater, excuse me, getting that out of the way. With that grater, we're going to be able to grate some ginger. Now I have a microplane grater here. If you wanted to, if you didn't have a grater you felt like would work, you could just mince this really fine. We need about 1.5 teaspoons. I'm getting pretty close. That's going to be added to our, there we go. That will be added to our soup a little bit later. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, so I'm just going to kind of pile that up. I'm going to take our ham, I'm going to cut it in half, the slices in half, and then I'm just going to run a knife through it, getting these kind of strips. This ham's a little fatty. Some ham is not quite so fatty. The fat will actually work in our favor here. Add a little oil. Now we're going to start putting some ingredients together before we head to the stove. Now when we get to the stove, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take, I've got sesame oil. If you've got vegetable oil, it'll work fine. We're going to take about a tablespoon of either sesame oil or vegetable oil. We're going to heat that in the pan. And then we're going to take our ginger, we're going to take garlic. I've got some back here. Some minced garlic. And we're going to cook those until we can start to smell them. Then we're going to add some mushroom and ham. And then once we've added those ingredients, we'll start building it, the soup part. We'll add some chicken stock, which I've got a quart of, and a couple of other ingredients. Let's check on our eggs. Looks like they're about done, and then we can go back to the stove for the soup. See, my eggs just came out. I'm putting them right into this ice bath. I'm going to let them sit there and just get nice and cool. We definitely want them to stop cooking. Now I'm going to move my pan over to the stove. Remember, all I put in here so far was that sesame oil. I'm going to turn it on about medium-high heat. Now I'm putting the, and my oil's getting nice and hot here. I'm going to add that ginger that I chopped up and the garlic that I chopped up. You can hear that little sizzle. And we're just going to cook that for just a second in that sesame oil or vegetable oil. That's going to add a lot of flavor to your ramen. Now, if you had other aromatic ingredients, if you were going to add onion or shallot or anything like that, this is where you would add them. You'd add them before we add any proteins and before we add the mushrooms. Now, in just a minute, and we can hear this sizzling, I'm going to add the ham. I'm going to add the shiitake mushrooms that I've got. Now, I had some frozen, so I'm just giving them a quick chop, and then I'm going to add them into this pan. All right, here you can see I've got ham and those mushrooms. They're going right into this pan, into that oil. Now, that ham's already cooked. All we're really doing is just adding those flavor components, getting it all, some of that fat that was in that ham rendered, getting those mushrooms softened up just a little bit. Again, if you were adding hard vegetables, carrots, celery, things that need just a little bit of time to cook, now is when you would add them. If you're, for green onions, or I'm going to use some leeks, they're like green onions, just bigger, you want to add those at the very end, because they can't handle that long cooking time. But for carrots, celery, squash, if you want to use zucchini or squash in here, something like that, you can add pretty much anything that sounds like it would be good to you. Just remember, if it needs a little cooking time, add it in here to get some color before you add the broth. Now I've also just added just a little pinch of salt. I'm not going to over season this because often chicken stock, which is what I'm using, has a little bit of salt in it and we don't want it to be too salty. So this is one of the rare places where I will say wait until the end when that soup is almost done. Taste it for seasoning and add the salt then. Don't season as you go too much, because we are going to add some soy sauce in here. We are going to add some other flavors. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the chicken stock in here. Let those flavors kind of incorporate. And I'm scraping it just a little bit on the bottom where some of that yummy fond, the stuff that just gets stuck to the bottom of the pan when you're browning things. Just want to make sure to get that into the soup. Now, while we're waiting for that to heat up, I'm going to get the next round of ingredients ready. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. You can see that the soup here is starting to boil. And so now we're going to add a few other ingredients. First, some flavor ingredients. I've got about 2 tablespoons of soy sauce right here. And then I have 2 tablespoons of rice vinegar and 2 teaspoons of sugar. If you are going to put the vinegar in there, you want to go ahead and add the sugar because it balances out some of the acid flavor. You'll notice that soy sauce starts giving us that characteristic ramen bowl color. Now this is a good place to point out that if you wanted to put hoisin sauce in here or fish sauce, you can add it here. You can also add it at the end as kind of a condiment. It's what sounds good to you. So I have all of my vegetables except for my leeks in here because I didn't want to put a whole lot of vegetables in this one. Mushrooms, the garlic, and now I'm going to add my noodles. Now, the great thing about this is I've got these packages of cheap ramen noodles. I'm going to throw away that flavor packet. It's awful. It's loaded with garbage. MSG, lots of preservatives, lots of things you just don't need. You can break these up if you want smaller pieces. I kind of like my ramen to have those big long noodles. So I'm just going to kind of drop these in there. And they don't even completely submerge, but that is okay because as these cook, and it'll take about 3 minutes, as these cook, they're going to soften up just fine. We're going to be able to kind of move them around. Now, while these are cooking, like I said, I'm going to cook these for about 3 minutes. I want to point out something. If you're not planning on eating this right away, don't cook the noodles in the soup. If you're going to wait and eat this, let's say I was making this and I was going to eat it for lunch tomorrow. I can make everything. I can even cook the noodles, but cook the noodles in boiling water and then drain them in an ice bath, just like we did our eggs, so they stop cooking, and keep them in a separate container. And then you can just heat them up with soup broth that's been warmed up, and they won't get mushy or soggy or fall apart. And you can see these are already starting to get pretty soft. So I'm just going to kind of start pushing on them a little bit, stirring them around, trying to get them loosened up. Now I had to put 3 packages of ramen in here for 4 people. If you really like your noodles and you want extra noodles, you can of course cook more. I find that that doing the 3 for 4 is a good ratio of broth to noodle. It gives you enough soup to enjoy it, and also gives you enough noodles to have that noodle dish. All right, while we're waiting for these to cook, in the last minute or so of cooking, I'm going to add my leeks. And I would also at this point add any other sauce component I wanted. So if I was going to add a little bit of fish sauce in here, I'm adding my leeks now. If I was going to add a fish sauce or anything like that, now's probably when I would do that. This is also, by the way, when you want to get a spoon out and try your dish. Just make sure that it's got the right flavors. You go to a ramen place, those green onions are probably just going to be sitting on top, kind of like a garnish. Oh, there you go. That's a good taste. All right. And I just like putting my green onions in my soup so that they can flavor the broth a little bit as opposed to a garnish. Either way works great. In just a second, I'm going to put the whole dish together and you're going to see kind of what it looks like in the bowl. And that'll be it for today. A nice, fast, easy meal made with cheap ingredients. Hopefully it's something that as we're out on our own seniors and starting to make some decisions about what we're going to eat on a nightly basis, this is just a little healthier, a little more satisfying. It's got a little more protein because of the eggs than if you just take that package out and microwave it. I'll meet you back over at the middle station for the final bowl. All right, kitchen, we're about ready to put this bowl of noodles together. First thing I want to do, I was cutting up one of these eggs. I wanted you to see what I was talking about. You only notice that the white's completely cooked, but that yolk is super, super soft in the middle, almost runny. And that's exactly what we want. We don't want any of that chalky whiteness in there. We want that nice dark orange center. Now, I am going to put this bowl together very simply. First, I'm going to take some noodles and put it in the bowl. If I was making all 4 dishes, I just make sure those noodles were served equally into the 4 bowls. Make sure everybody got their bowls, the noodles. And now, I'm going to get some of the chunks. So I've got some ham and some mushroom. Make sure you've got a little bit of that in there. And then finally, using the side of the dish, I'm going to make sure we have some broth. All right, so we've got noodles, ham, and then I'm going to lay on top of that half of an egg. Now, if you were making this for two people instead of 4, obviously you could put both those eggs on there. I'm going to set that there. I've got a little bit of sriracha if you like a little bit of spice. I'm just going to kind of, whoa, a little bit of a mess there. I'm going to fix that, but I'm going to just put a little bit on top of there. Clean this bowl up. And there you have it, kitchen. Souped up ramen noodles. I hope you had some fun cooking this 9 weeks. I know it was hard because of the corona quarantine and having to stay at home. But I hope you got to at least cook 1 or 2 of the dishes. Remember, next week we're not cooking. We're just going to be looking at some kind of neat kitchen gadgets and telling you how they work. And other than that, I hope you have an incredible week. I'll see you next week. And stay safe. Be happy. Bye.
Brings me home.